Thank you for coming. We've had a lot of people coming to the booth. I've been really impressed on the number of Microsoft developers that are here. I work at Microsoft in Visual Studio. We've been working with Salesforce on some tooling and some runtime tooling scenarios. And I've got to say it's been a really fantastic partnership. So I'm really excited to be able to be here today and talk at a conference such as this. In fact, today I'll be doing this demo, talking about what we're doing in Visual Studio. And tomorrow morning, I'll be talking about the SDK that Wade Wegner has been driving. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, so I'll be covering for him. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. So just curious from a show of hands on why you guys are here. Not here, the bigger here, but here. How many of you guys are using the SOAP services at this point? Couple? Okay. What about the REST services? All right, some more people there. And how many of you using the Force SDK so far to develop against that? You guys heard about it? No hands? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. It's actually an SDK that actually works over the REST APIs, so you can actually get .NET development, using your .NET languages, VB and C# against REST, so you don't have to actually code against the lower level APIs. How many of you are currently using Visual Studio? Okay, pretty good selection. And how many have used it in the past but aren't using it now? All right, a couple. All right, so that's where I'm hoping to help with and help you guys see that we are working to fill some of the gaps. One of which is, what are your challenges working with REST? Is it very easy to work with? It's great from a runtime perspective, but coding against it provides some interesting challenges that some people are just kind of used to. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can build these modern apps. We think of it as software as a service. But we want to balance this productivity we have of SOAP over the values that we've been seeing with REST. Now, with SOAP, we have in SOAP XML Web Services, right? It was a great API that kind of bridged or brought us forward from these binary serialization formats that we had with DCOM and other protocols and other platforms as well. Right? SOAP was about this nice textual format I can read and computers could read across platform. We generated a lot of proxy code in the project so you can actually work with that, so you don't have to actually write low-level APIs and serializing XML. And when you change things in Salesforce, you just right-click, say update, and you'll get those updates for things like if you add more fields or add more objects or change some of the metadata. But with the add service reference experiences, the tooling we had around that, it was an all or nothing thing. We would generate the code for all 200 objects plus 500 or whatever it was you had. And that proxy code, in order for you to be able to extend it, to add business logic in the setters and getters or add other methods, we had to generate all these partial methods, partial events, partial classes. So for 200 objects, it was like 128,000 lines of code, which you had to compile, but you can't touch this, right? Because we would replace it. It was a single file generator concept. So we got a little Cirque du Soleil thing happening here. We want to kind of take the balances of SOAP and kind of balance it out. Now, it's Cirque du Soleil kind of thing here, so a little bit of back and forth. But with REST, it's really nice because it's this compact wire format, right? With still text, but we got rid of the extra noise. And it's a lot more cross-platform friendly because it's smaller packages and the JSON libraries are becoming much more popular. However, there's no metadata by default in those payloads by design. There's some standards evolving with things like Waddle and Swagger and a couple others, and we're working on tooling to take advantage of that. But a lot of these services don't have that information in a standard format, and that's something we worked hard to try to resolve. Rather than make everybody abide by these new standards, we want to actually take a different approach. And we also think about authentication, which, while there's some standards evolving, they're evolving quickly, and not everybody's implementing in the same way because there are variances between different platforms. So what do we do when everybody's moving around and we're trying to build tooling around these scenarios? So we've taken what we refer to as add service reference, which used to be add web reference, and now we're going to call it add connected service. And this is a new modern way of dealing with those that acknowledges that the technologies are changing. It acknowledges that services actually need to be configured on the server side. Right? With SOAP, we just consumed things and we had to write the right authentication code, but the service was already pre-configured. How many of you guys have created connected apps in Salesforce? Right? You have to go to the portal, you have to go figure out all the different values, hopefully you get them right, and come back and then consume it. So we wanted to also make sure that we're open to different technologies. It doesn't have to be OData. It doesn't have to be REST 8.3.4. Right? And we wanted to make sure that each of those services could express their unique value. I worked with Oracle quite a bit when I did a lot of the data tooling. They had things that they wanted to expose that didn't look like SQL Server. Imagine that. Salesforce is going to have things that are different than SAP and CRM, dynamic CRM. So we wanted to give those vendors a way to ask the questions that are relevant. And then we wanted to balance. How do you get started? You added this thing, and you're dumped in this sea of Visual Studio, like, all right, now what? You go out and Google or Bing, and you're searching, you have no idea whether the docs you're finding are for the tool, the version you have, or something else, or somebody's harebrained idea that might actually be better than our docs, who knows? So what we're going to do is bring you some focused docs, very specific to the tooling experience we just did. We'll explain what we've done and give you some samples to get you started without dumping the samples in the project. And lastly, we want to scaffold code instead of generate it. And this is our little MC Hammer thing of can't touch this. Right? We want to get away from the can't touch this code. We want you to be able to own that code. We want you to be able to decide how much should be in the project. All right, we're going to get him out of the way. A little distracting. We want you to be able to customize not only the objects you choose, but how it's generated and added to your project with something called T4 templates, which is a kind of a macro language standard that's around. All right, enough slides, developer zone. Let's do some demos. So what I'm going to do is I've got Visual Studio 2013. This is the release that's available to everybody. And I'm going to create a new project. Now, in this case, I'm actually going to choose MVC. And it's not that you guys can't build web apps in Salesforce. We certainly know you can do that. But I wanted to show kind of a very simple way of consuming this. And we want to support this experience across all project types. So I'm going to press this and get that created. Standard ASP.NET app. And what we're going to do is consume Salesforce so that we can actually create some pages to create, read, update, and delete the contact. Now, fairly basic thing, but I want to show how that experience, and you can see where it'll grow from there. So using this new tooling, which is not released yet, so we're coming, and we'll talk about that at the end, I'm going to add a connected service. And what I see here is instead of this magic text box, which you're going to figure out what the URL is and type in, and then we're going to guess what technology was done for that URL, we're going to give you what we call these customized experiences, these curated experiences for Azure, for Office 365, for Salesforce. Now, rather than have these in the box as we ship, in the box is kind of interesting these days, we're also going to integrate with the Visual Studio Gallery so we can ship additional updates in the gallery. You can ship extensions in the gallery for connected services. So we'll show you what we've been working on. We'll pick the Salesforce one. And now what you're seeing is the Salesforce provider for connected services. The questions we're going to ask you are very specific to Salesforce. I'm going to pick a new identity. We're actually going to remember identity, so you don't have to keep on logging in every time. I can choose production, sandbox, or custom. I can do a custom domain. In fact, I got that. We'll have MRUs here as well. You guys in Salesforce have this down. I don't need to remember all these details. I like to be reminded and pick from. Now I'll log in, and in this case, I actually have a custom login page, as you can see, and we'll see that again in a minute here. And then the connected service experience itself is a connected app. So I have to provide permission to say this connected app could go ask my tenant for the Salesforce schema. What are the objects? Can I create a connected app? So of course, we'll say yes. So that was the design time authentication. Now when my app is running, how do I want the service to be authenticated? Right? I've got my app authentication, but when I make calls out to Salesforce, do I want the user's user ID to go through? Right? I might want to pop some UI like we saw there and let me log in to Salesforce as the end user and have my identity flow through, and we get back the refresh token. It might be a headless service, right? I might have a Windows service that's doing some batch jobs and there's no users involved, so I want to embed the username and password in the app. Not very secure, because of course somebody can go grab that username and password. Salesforce also can do JWT bearer tokens that use digital certificates. How many guys are using digital certificates? Anybody? All right, one. It's probably it hurts, right? It's kind of a pain to set these things up. And that's what we hear is like, yeah, I'm a developer, I don't want to deal with that. And we'll deal with it later, and it never gets dealt with. So what we want to do is, in the tooling, we believe, have a hypothesis, that if we give you good design time tools, that when you configure these, that we help you create digital certificates and manage those by matching it in Salesforce, that we will get a better, more secure configuration. So for this app, I'm going to do a web server flow. I'm going to use that custom branded page as part of my login. And I'm going to choose to scaffold all the objects for my Salesforce REST endpoint. Now, once that's done, we'll pop this UI that will give me that what we call guidance. What happened to my project? What did you do? Right? Did we just completely scatter stuff all over your project and you'll never use it again? Well, what we've done is the first thing we've done is added the Force.NET SDK. It's a NuGet package. It's open source, available on GitHub. I'll be demoing it tomorrow in more detail. And we brought that NuGet reference in. We've added some additional references for system web because we're going to read the configuration values out of the config file. Because I chose to scaffold the objects, and because we're not done, we didn't get the selector done yet, so I'm scaffolding all of them. We add data annotations, which we'll see how it can bring in that describe information off of Salesforce. We will create a class that reads that configuration, and depending on the auth flow you've chosen, we'll have that configured as well. So we've taken care of that grunt, boring, just get it done, I hate writing that code, I hate figuring it out, much less writing that code, and get that done for you so you can get to the business logic or the business processes that you want to do, right? You guys are used to this all the time in Salesforce. And we've added the values to web config, excuse me. And we've also created that connected app in Salesforce for you. So let's go through that. Excuse me. Now, the first thing I need to do is, after I've configured all of this, and you can see I've got that in my project now, what we need to do is come to web config and find the connected app that we just created. I've got a comment here to help me find it. And we notice that the consumer secret is not filled in. Turns out that secret, there is a secret, and Salesforce didn't want to tell us what it is. So we have to go manually paste it out. So we've hooked it up in here so you can get a link, so you can go right in. We find the connected app. We're going to click it. It's a secret. Don't tell anybody. We'll copy that out, and we'll paste it in to our config. So I had to finish up that one step. And the other thing we've done is, because we know people are going to forget that, we've actually added a build error in your app so that reminds you just to replace that. So we'll get rid of that. So now what? normally you're kind of guessing, going, yeah, okay. If I hit F5, I don't get anything because we did not put sample code in your project. We don't think that's the right thing to do because after you've done this 5, 10, 20 times, whatever it is when you've got it down in memory, you don't want to be the first step to delete the sample code. So we have some getting started documentation here that helps me figure out what the next steps are, which you might want to do a couple different things. We've got an MVC walkthrough. I got a console app, which I'll do another version of it tomorrow that doesn't use the designer. So we're going to create an MVC app that creates, reads, updates, and deletes the contact object. Now, the first thing to do in MVC is we create a controller. We've got the code here, which I'm copied in. I come over to the controllers folder, and I'm going to say add controller. We'll create an MVC5 empty controller for contacts. And I'm just going to replace this code here, and we'll walk through it. So with MVC, the controllers, what it does is it maps the HTTP verbs to methods and actions on a controller. So get maps to index, which is like a list. And inside of that, I can get the list of properties off the contact object is the way I've set this up. But the way it works is because I've chosen the web server flow, I want to first make sure that this service is even authenticated. So we have a little check here. And if it's not, we'll redirect the user so they can log in. They log in, it comes back, and then we'll go through the flow that we'll get on a force client, which is the main object you work with for creating, updating, inserting, deleting. And then we issue a query. Everything's async. And I can query using just SOQL on there. But I'm going to populate, in this case, because we've scaffolded out the objects, I can actually put it directly into a typed object, which we'll see some value from here in a minute. So I've got my controller, but I need to be able to see something. I want to do something more than just show the code and show the data in the debugger. So we'll come over here, and I'm going to say add a view, which is part of the MVC templates. And it picks up the name of the index, the method name. And I can choose list as one of the templates. I'm going to choose the contact class because that's what I want. And as a result, the MVC scaffolding will take a look at that model and give me a heading of a table, reading the display name for each one. And there's a lot of properties on the contact object. We'll come back, clean that up. And then for each item that's returned, we're going to display an individual element. This is the data element. So before I F5, one more thing, we need a place to click, right? So we'll come over here to the navigation menu, and I'll copy this line of code. We'll go to shared layout, and I'm just going to add that razor HTML action, which basically just says, paint this text on the screen. When somebody clicks on it, call that method on that controller. Okay? So let's run this and see what we got. So we'll fire this up. We'll be running the app locally, but of course we're calling out to Salesforce. We'll click on Salesforce contacts, and the first step is, yeah, I'm not authenticated. Right? So we'll redirect the user. We'll go to my very funky branded page. We know it's me because it just ugly purple, and I was thinking about vacation because it's so nice here, and hopefully this boat will be done by the Contosa repairs by the time I actually leave. So we're in. So now I'm back in. The SDK with the configuration that we've done with the connected services has grabbed that refresh token, saved it off so that now I can continue to, as long as the life of the page, and run through this queries and other additional queries that I might do. So we're going to query off, and we can see that we got contacts back. We got 21 of them back. But let's look at it in the page. So what we'll see is, what do we get back? Well, we got back just the data elements that we asked, right? City, state. Salesforce always gives us some extra data. But notice we also got full labels back, right? REST doesn't have that by default. Because we know this is a Salesforce REST endpoint that we've configured through connected services, we know where to go get the describe API and get that additional information and bring it back. So let's go and just finish this up real quick. We're going to bring in the rest of the views, and we'll go into contacts here. We'll run this again. And all I did was just if I did the scaffolder and I said add, create, edit, delete templates, gives me all the properties. I just stripped out the properties that I don't want to display. We'll log in again because I did shut down my browser here. Oh, I guess I got a breakpoint happening here. Let's get rid of that. Log in. And now I'm going to get a little cleaner list because I've reduced them. I got edit, delete, and so forth, but we're going to create a new one. Now I got a weird, I don't know, what do you call it, horror movie thing going lately. So we're going to pick Freddy here, Freddy Krueger, and where does Freddy live? Elm Street, right? All right. We were debating on what town he's in. Somebody said Compton, which kind of sounded familiar, which I think is in California, because all horror movies that kill people are in California, it seems. I don't know what the zip code is, so whatever. USA. We'll do another retro phone number if anybody recognizes that. And it's semi-modern, so we'll give Freddie an email. I guess it was really modern. We give him a Twitter account or something, but didn't set that up. And I've got him back. We can go and look at details. Now, I know that none of this is like rocket science because this is the stuff you do in Salesforce very easily. But it's not so easy when you're doing these apps outside of Salesforce. And we wanted to make sure that we're bringing that level of productivity. He's going, yeah. So, including, as I mentioned before, I guess I didn't bring enough characters in there. First name, 40 characters. That's pretty damn long. So, at some point, it might be longer. We give you an error because we've read that describe information. Same thing for email. We go back to the list, and we can go and delete Freddy, but we know he's going to return, so we'll get rid of this one at least. So all of that was pretty quickly done by leveraging the runtime tools that are there, the REST API, and some tooling to go find the rest of the information. Now, the way that I was able to get that additional describe information on there is we went and read it, and we pulled in the key, the display name. We've added recently some attributes for creatable and updatable. We've added email, if I could spell email right. This is why I need tooling. Email. Really? What is going on? All right, phone. That is really weird. All right, I don't know what I was in. So phone, email, URL. We bring those attributes in, and as I mentioned, this is scaffolded as your code. So you can make changes to it, and you own it. You add the business logic and the events if you want it and need it. If you want to change the code that we brought into your project, we use T4 templates that you can edit yourself. And we just have this macro language out there, and you see the gray is the stuff that gets added, and the rest of the goo is the stuff that glues it all together, and we can have fun with that later. All right. Little ginger, little breathe, little palette. What the hell did I just cover? All right. So we did Salesforce configuration. We created the connected app for you. Of course, it's your connected app. You can edit it. We try to have the right defaults in there to start. We brought that configuration into your project. We've scaffolded out the code that is the options that you've chosen on top of the runtime SDK and the objects that you wanted from your schema. And once we're done, we'll have the object selector as well, because you probably want 2 or 3 objects out of the 2 or 500. We've given you a set of documentation that balances what do I do now versus what do I need later to know? Right? We don't want to pollute your project with samples. But wait, there's more. So not all clients are created equal. We totally understand that. Your companies are looking for multiple device deployments. So when you're doing this, do you guys even, well, what do you do? Have a little fun here. How do you target these things? Whoa, something's going, I got automation happening somewhere, I think. So, is it going to stop? All right, stop. Do you even think of Visual Studio for non-Windows devices? So I kind of have a realization when I was talking to customers a couple of months ago. Like, don't even think about it. Yeah, I love Visual Studio, but I'm building iOS and Android apps. So through a partnership with Xamarin, you can use your C# skills to build the majority of the app in C#, connecting to Salesforce, and deploy as native apps to those devices. With Cordova, as a partnership that we're doing, working in the community, you can take HTML and JavaScript, compile it into a container, so you get native access to the device, you get pinning, you get all of that fun, including app deployment, but you've written in HTML and JavaScript. And for the most part, we try to make it so you don't have to write it differently for each device. Now, we've been partnering in the community with this on this Cordova effort. We have a preview that's out now. We encourage you to give it a shot. It's still early, but let me give you a preview of it here. So I'm going to create a new app. And instead of C#, under other languages, because I've got C# as my default, we'll go down here, and with the preview installed, I've got a blank Cordova app template. So we'll add that in, and typical VS fashion, we'll give you some starter stuff there. And let me find the right one. Now, what we want to do is give you the ability to opt into the frameworks that you want. And we have NuGet Manager to bring in a lot of these frameworks. It's a little early, so not all the versions are synced up yet, and we'll let that go away. We've also heard that we need to have NPM and Bower because developers that are working with Cordova want to work the Cordova way, not the Visual Studio way. So we're going to do a lot of work in there to make sure it's familiar to the Cordova developer. So let me go and take the scripts that I need. I'm going to grab Angular, Bootstrap, and jQuery. We'll add those in there. I'll grab the Bootstrap style sheets. I saw a presentation earlier about the Bootstrap Salesforce. I wasn't brave enough to go and update before that. And I'm going to grab in and I'm going to drop in some Angular files to make this work. So in this demo, what I want to do is from a mobile app, I've got this little Contoso repair thing where based on an email, I want to go find a customer in Salesforce, and they're telling me that some product that they've got, their watch, is broken, they want it fixed. I don't know what product ID it is. I don't know if they even bought it from me. I don't know if it's under warranty. And where's the product? It's off in SAP. So I want to go get the data from both of those and bring it back and display it in my Cordova app. So we've got the normal Angular Bootstrap stuff in here, Angular stuff with a controller. Inside of this, what I've set up is a couple of properties. I've got the user data property, which is going on the view model, which is going to capture the result after I do my REST call, uses the promise pattern because it's asynchronous. I got an email property, which I'm going to data bind to, and I'll set it to a default value so I don't have to type it in every time. And then just some initialization code. So let's go and run that. So what we've done is hooked up the Ripple emulator, which is not built by us. Very cool. We brought that into Visual Studio. We've set up a lot of the acquisition of all of these tools that got to be hooked together, and there's a lot of them. So the Ripple emulator is pretty cool. Let's kind of expand this here for a second. My favorite feature is this little jammy here for the accelerometer. I haven't written any apps for it yet, but I just like spinning that thing around. But anyway, we'll bring this over here. And actually, I did want to show one other thing. There are more practical things for screen rotation, devices, so I can choose a BlackBerry that has the smaller screen if I grab the right one. It'll reset there. And I can test this on the fly here, so it's very cool. Let's go, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to do this over here. If I run through this, because I've got a breakpoint set up, what we'll see is I've got my breakpoint in Visual Studio, I've got the simulator running in the browser, which if I had a device, it would hook up the debugger to the device as well, so I can debug right to devices. We'll see that I can step through my Angular code, and I hide the search, I show the loading. Let me add a breakpoint here. And I can go off and make that asynchronous query, and while that's gone, of course, my browser page still moves because it's asynchronous. And then when it returns, which we'll do here in a second, and it's going out to a service, it's joining into Salesforce and SAP, it's bringing back that data, which we can see here. I can see some data that brought back. And if I look at it over here, we'll see that, oh, I grabbed the smaller screen. Well, there you go. So you can see that my data was now brought back, right? So very quick, pull that together. I'm missing something here though, right? With good debugging, I got the DOM Explorer. I could click on the DOM Explorer in VS, come over here, wait, did it? Come over, grab that, and if I look, did I grab the right element? Sorry. And it'll show me here, and I notice that my icon for the phone number is back, but there's no data. Do I know, is my JavaScript, is it my HTML? You know, who knows? So what I want to do is I do want to figure that out. So if I run this again, because I have the breakpoints, sorry, I hit F5 in the browser. I'll hit this over here, hit this back over here. So that another cool feature is inside the browser, I don't have to reset my debugging session each time. We just refresh the browser and it'll come in. And if I look closely, my phone number is not actually being brought back from the service in the first place. So I have to go debug that code over there. Okay. Yep. So, wrapping up. That was the stuff we're doing with Cordova. I said it's early on. There's a lot of stuff we're doing with Xamarin. Obviously, I don't have a lot of time to demo all of these cool features. We're working hard to make sure that the developers that want to use Visual Studio can use Visual Studio. We know that you're connecting to multiple services, Salesforce, SAP, somebody else's. We know that you want to target multiple devices. We want you to be able to bring all those together. Now, we've been working with, I saw Dave in the back there, with Salesforce. They've been an excellent partner. We're developing the tooling experience that I showed you as open source. It's not published yet because it'll be next month when we do our preview. But we are looking for customers that either want to start using it today and give us some feedback on it, or you have other services that you want to plug into the connected services experience. So if you're interested, that's this first bit.ly link. Go ahead and hit me up there. There's other contacts there, or come talk to me afterwards. Tomorrow morning, I have a session that I'll be covering for Wade on the SDK itself. Here, 10 a.m., somewhere over there, Dave's saying. And with that, I'm getting yanked off the stage. Thank you very much.
Sign up also at your booth.
Oh, and sign up at the booth. I'll be back at the Microsoft booth. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it, and great opportunity to be able to come and talk to you guys here.